Hello everyone, my name is Hayden Danielson and I am the Senior Onboarding Coach here at Tovuti. In this walkthrough, we'll be reviewing the purpose of user groups and share some best practices and tips when it comes to your overall group structure. Let's dive in. Setting up your user groups is helpful for administrators to keep track of the various roles, levels, classes, or general cohorts of users on their platform. In addition, user groups provide a way to segment what content or permissions users will receive, whether we're talking about learners on the platform who will only take advantage of content that you provide, or if we're talking about sub-administrators who will be helping you build out your platform. For teaching purposes, I will now act as a Tovuti administrator. In order to consolidate my users into alike cohorts, I will create a number of different user groups. I want some users to see certain courses, while others see different courses. Likewise, I want some of my fellow teammates to help me build our platform, but I don't want them to see all of the options that I see as a site administrator. I would like them to be sub-administrators, and I might have a few different levels of sub-administrators on the platform. First, let's define the default user groups that typically appear in new Tovuti instances. At the top, we have the public user group. This group is very rarely utilized, and there are two reasons why it is here. The first is so that the rest of our user group structure can exist in the first place. The second is in case we want to have public-facing materials. Oftentimes, if an admin wants to have public-facing courses or other resources, permissions can be set to allow those that are not users on your platform to access these resources nonetheless. In this case, the permissions would be set to the public user group. There are three example user groups that may appear within your structure as well: affiliate, blogger, and marketing department. These three groups are here as samples and can be renamed by clicking on them. You'll see here we have the group title. They can be adjusted as well with a different group parent. And you can also delete these groups if you decide that you want to start from scratch by removing some of these samples. They are not tied to anything on the platform and just serve as an example of some titles that you may want to give your custom user groups. The next major user group is the registered user group. This one is the most important. Everyone that is a user on your platform must be a part of this group, from end users to site administrators. Think of this as like the front door to your platform. This group is tied to everyone's account because it is the starting point for all users and all future user groups that you create. Another way to think about this group is that it is the pool that contains all users within your platform. Any custom user groups that you create will live underneath the registered group to start. We'll see an example of this here in just a moment. The last two groups that make up the default structure here are a couple of the administrative groups: sub-administrators and site administrators. The sub-administrator role by default only allows a user to access a blank admin panel. However, certain admin permissions can be granted to this group as well. And we can also contain some custom user groups underneath the sub-administrators and site administrators. Now, the site administrators are like super admins. They can see and affect everything on the platform. Site administrator privileges cannot be overridden or revoked except by another site administrator. This can be done through the user manager. Combined, you can affect any of your custom groups or the sub-administrator role by going to the admin roles and permissions. Again, site administrators should be the only ones that have this privilege. And in addition, site administrator privileges cannot be revoked through the admin roles and permissions. Those are the default user groups that may appear on your platform. With that understanding, let's talk about the steps necessary to successfully create and manage new user groups. Creating user groups is a pretty easy two-step process. First, we'll want to click on the bright green New button. Next, decide on a group title and the new group's parent. For testing purposes, I'm going to call this User Group A. In most cases, you can start by housing your new groups underneath the registered user group. From there, go ahead and save or save and close your new group. This will bring us back to the main user group page, and you can now see your brand new user group. There is no limit to the number of user groups that you can create on the platform, and in addition, you can create as many parent or child user groups as you'd like. Now that we have some example user groups, let's define the relationship between these groups. We can split user groups into two large categories, parent and child groups. Parent groups will appear above their respective child groups. You can have multiple child groups under one parent group. An example is the case of the registered group with sub-administrators, the marketing department, site administrators, and now user group A as child groups. We even have a multiple tiered structure here with registered being at the top, sub-administrators being the next level, and a couple of other child groups underneath sub-administrators. Within the structure, there is a trickle-down effect that takes place. For example, in parental relationships, parents often want their children to be better off than they were. A similar idea takes place here within user groups. If there is a resource that you want to share with an entire section of your user group structure, you can share that resource with the parent group. From there, any child groups should also be given access to this resource, such as those below the registered group in this case. The trickle-down effect allows everyone in this section of user groups to view the resource, such as a course, media item, or other resources. However, if you want to set permissions for a resource to only be sent to a child group, those permissions do not extend backwards to the parent group. In other words, you can get more specific with child groups. Another example could be that there are general resources given to the parent group and therefore its respective child groups, while there are specific resources given to each of the child groups. So in this case, if I wanted to send a resource to everybody registered for my platform, I could set that up and it would trickle down to all of the child groups within. However, if I wanted to set up a resource just for the marketing department, it would not go back up to the sub-administrators or the registered users. It would only be sent to that child group. Let's take another real-world example and say we have a parent group called engineering, and we want to create different resources for different engineers. We could have chemical, mechanical, and electrical engineering as child groups within our structure. There could be general engineering courses that everyone should take, which we would assign to the parent engineering group. However, each child group, again, chemical, mechanical, and engineering, may have its own specialty. From there, we could assign certain resources to each of these child groups so that they have their own materials to review. The same principle holds true for admin permissions as well. If a certain parent user group is given permissions to view tabs on the back end of your platform, those permissions will trickle down to the child groups as well. For example, if I wanted to give specific permissions to the sub-administrators to say that they could view the design or social tabs, I could set that up through the admin roles and permissions. Those same permissions would then trickle down to the marketing department. The only caveat to this rule is that site administrators do not inherit any permissions from other groups. This is a hardwired group. Site administrators can see and affect everything permanently. Those permissions cannot be revoked, they cannot be deleted. If certain permissions are given to the sub-administrators, it will only trickle down to those groups besides the site administrators. Again, more specific permissions can be given to child groups and it will not trickle back up. This is why site administrators can be thought of as like super admins, but those permissions do not go back up to the marketing department as a fellow child group, and they also do not go back up to the sub-administrators. For all of these reasons, it is important to establish a clear, unified user group structure and review the resources or permissions that each user group has. Let's take a look at some of the major areas that utilize user groups for permissions and connect some of the dots that we've been talking about here. For your end users, all of the groups that represent your end users will more than likely have specific courses given to them. In this case, I have Compliance 101 set as one of my first courses. If I go into Compliance 101 and head to the Permissions tab, I can see that I have given the registered user group the ability to visibly see this course and also purchase or register for the course, meaning that they can physically dive in and take advantage of the lessons within this course. In this case, because I have given it to the registered user group, everybody on my platform would be able to access this resource. However, if I eliminated the registered user group and said that only user group A would be able to view that, that is the only group that would have the capability to see those to see those courses. And any child groups that I had underneath user group A would also be able to see that. Another area that utilizes user groups is the checklist feature. If I click into a checklist and go to the Assign Users tab, again, we see our user groups appear. We have our registered group selected, and we have the same ability to select which user groups should see this checklist. Another major area where you may want to assign certain resources to certain user groups is through the Events feature. If I open up a new event, on the right-hand side, we have a primary area called Access and Registration. Underneath this area, we have Registration Access and View Access, pretty much the exact same concept that we saw with courses, where View Access allows certain users to see that event and know that it exists, while Registration Access actually allows them to sign up for that event. In this case, we have the public user group selected in both areas, meaning that because this is at the very top of our user group structure, that everyone outside of the platform and inside of the platform could potentially see this. Now remember, public users, those that are outside of your platform, will only know that these resources exist if you provide those tabs on your landing page. If we were to highlight different groups here, those specific groups would be the only ones that could view and potentially register for that event. There are a couple of other features that utilize the user groups, and so you will probably see these pop up time and time again as you create different resources on your platform, such as in the media library, and even with certain things like gamification on your platform. With all that being said, user groups play a vital role in your platform. And we would go so far as to say that they are the most foundational component of your platform. So take your time as you define these user groups, and it is never a bad idea to collaborate with your team and come up with some documentation to describe how your user group structure is going to look and feel as people come on board as either an end user or as an administrator helping you create and manage these various groups. Understanding user groups and how they are the foundation for everything on your platform is important to ensure a seamless, enjoyable experience for your users and fellow admins. Establishing internal best practices and general structuring tips for your user groups is essential so that everyone is on the same page for the permissions that are granted to various users and to fellow admins. Thank you all so much for taking the time to understand user groups in Tovuti. We hope that this information is helpful as you continue to build out your unique, one-of-a-kind platform. We'll see you all in the next video.